Here's the mindful man reading. Oops. Reading Home Truths, chapter 39, 49. What the hell's happening here? The train rocked and rolled through the frosty countryside, and snow was falling like confetti, coating the windows. Simon daydreamed all the way home. He wondered what Sandy had been up to. He couldn't wait to see her again and find out. He hoped she hadn't got into any trouble. The journey had been a great success, and he hoped that Emily would keep in touch. He was optimistic, and he watched the snowy fields flash by and thought about the last few months. He'd certainly been on one hell of a journey. Finally, the train pulled in, shaking him from his dream. He was back on the cobbled streets, but this time with a spring in his step. As soon as Sandy saw him, she bounded up to him with her tongue lolling happily. Simon was overjoyed to see her, and he stroked her gently and let her paw rest in his hand. She was the only constant in his life. Anne's parents made him a lovely meal, but there was still a sad Paul in the house, and he retired to his room to read. It left Sandy sleeping. She was looking healthy and had a bright glow about her, whereas before she had looked drained. Simon hoped the worst was over, and he went to bed and he penned a letter to Emily. He was missing her already, and she definitely helped ease the agony of Anne's passing, which he still found hard to believe. He had no thought of romance. A good friend was all that he needed right now. He didn't know what to put in the letter, so he made it as simple as possible, and he hoped Emily would visit him soon. He knew that she'd have to stay in a B&B, and he'd love to show her around the town. It was nice to meet someone with such a zest for life. It was contagious. Simon fell asleep to the sound of the snowflakes tapping on the window. The next morning, when he awoke, the window was covered with snow, inside and out. He opened the window, and the icy air flooded the room. He was glad to be wearing pajamas. He loved the snow, but he hated being cold. It was a double-edged sword. He was worried about Sandy, and he searched for an extra woolly blanket for her. She didn't look too worried by the snow, as she gobbled up her meat and jelly, which was a good sign. Simon put her on her lead, and they slowly walked into town, and their joint footprints and boot prints made a happy trail. Sandy caught the flakes of snow on her tongue and seemed amused by it. The town looked beautiful and romantic. The snow had covered up all the rubbish and decay and made it new again. They walked down by the river, which was almost frozen over, but a few bubbles of water could be seen flowing under the ice. Sandy poured out the thick ice, looking confused, and Simon laughed. It was great to be back, he thought. They trudged over the school playing fields, and where Simon had his early triumph. It seemed only a moment ago when he'd first arrived at school, with his too short shirt and scuffed shoes. He was more aware of the passing of time, even though he was still young. Time was precious and not to be wasted, he thought. Before he knew it, the evening was drawing in, and he left Sandy to rest. He had a day at work to prepare for. Although he didn't find the job too difficult, he didn't want to be late. The winter months always made him feel like staying in bed and becoming a hermit, but he had to show Anne's parents that he could look after himself and pay his way. One day he would have to look for a place of his own, but he wasn't sure if he was ready for that just yet. He loved daydreaming, and it got him through the day. He was sure there were worse jobs, so he kept his head down. Looking at all the books every day made him feel like writing one, and one day he knew that he would. The snow was falling heavier, and it was making it hard for him to cycle. Cars were stuck, frozen, immobile near the curb, and the buses moved sluggishly like dinosaurs, sending slush spewing in their wake. When Simon opened the door, he noticed a letter addressed to him. He sat on the bed and quickly opened it. It was always exciting to receive a letter, he thought. Simon was overjoyed that it was from Emily. She told him that she missed him and that she was coming to see him at the weekend. She'd booked a B&B in the town and they could meet there. Simon was so happy that she was visiting so soon. The next few days at work crawled by, and all he could think of was her. To him it was pure friendship, but to the casual observer it was something more. In his excitement, he was careful not to neglect Sandy, to feed her and spend time with her. every evening, and he didn't want to subject her to the biting cold, but he had more walks planned. He knew the vet would be visiting soon, and he wanted to make sure that Sandy was in good health.